welcome to the stream. My name is Daniel, or Magic. I am here. Hopefully, everybody can hear me and not the background noise is too much. Um, let's see here. Okay, so I'm maybe it's better when I put this here. I just want to make sure that can you hear me? I just want to make sure everybody can hear me properly. Welcome to the chat, Victor. So yeah, today we're going over my presentation called The Architect's Blueprints, where it's a master class in basically story architecture, building a story, as they say. You can either run by the seat of your pants, or you can get some stuff down on paper and actually figure it out. Okay, awesome. Great. Perfect. Welcome everybody to the stream. I'm glad to have you guys all here. Sorry about the headphones. I have a different microphone, but I couldn't find the cord. Anyways, that's not important. What is important is I'm here from Novelpedia. I'm one of the admins. I'm the communications manager. And I'm bringing you guys this presentation today that I kind of set up and built. I had originally planned to do it before, but things just kind of got in the way. So here I am now on the stream. So we're just going to go through this one page at a time. The outline is we're gonna talk about foundation, structure versus creativity. Why it's important to structure everything so your creativity doesn't just go wild, and then you have continuity problems near the end of your story or halfway through. I ran into those problems many times writing. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention I am the author of about 16 online series, and I have a couple of my own physical copy of my book, which is published by me. It's on Amazon. But anyways, just show off my little bit of credentials I have. And then so the next part we'll be talking about is starting at the finish line. And I've always said the only way to really write a story is to start at the end. You need to know where your story is going to end before you really can figure out where it's going to begin. Then we're going to talk about visualizing the journey, your beat sheets and summaries. So just those different kind of things, like your different stats and keeping everything in line. So again, continuity. We're coming to that. Then we're going to talk about story Bibles, which I think are the most important thing when you're writing any kind of epic series or anything that has more than 2 books. It's almost crucial, especially if you're like me and you love writing in the lit RPG genre. That is, you can't do a story without it. Almost every one of my books has a story Bible. Epic of B, it has one posted. Every story I have has some sort of story Bible, or it has stuff about the characters or whatever else. But that is your single source of truth. That's where we look back to see things that a character that we had added, like who knows how long ago, but they had went off on a special mission, or you just hadn't come up in a long time. You're like, dang, I've added that person and I hadn't used them. But that's what the story Bible's there for, to like help you always remember everything you're doing. And then everything that we talk about in this is all going to tie back into number 5, and that's continuity. And that's something that's so important with any story, whether you're writing a short story or you're writing a long-winded epic tale that's got 2,000, 3,000 chapters. So yeah, we're going to be going over that today. So, to kick things off, we're going to start about the foundation, structure versus creativity. Why the plan doesn't kill inspiration, it protects it. So from writing to building, the paradigm shift. Most writers start as pantsers, just flying by the seat of your pants, discovering the story as you go. And that's where I started. I just decided, I want to write a book. And then I started doing it. And I just kept on going and going and going and going. And then I had the first book done. And then I look back, I'm like, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? And I had to go back all over it and everything. And the next part of my story, I had to work with everything that I had already went through and did. through my story, but because I didn't keep a good track of it and everything, I constantly had to go back and look about things. Constantly had to go look up information about things, rather than just keeping a separate document where we could just hold all that stuff and just go back and look at that rather than wasting our time with the other stuff. Architects don't hope to build though, or don't hope walls align. They know they will because they've measured twice before they built once. Supposed to say built. What changed? Or what changes from discovery to intention? You decide for what happens rather than hoping inspiration strikes. So if you know everything that's going to happen and you have it all written down, when you have trouble thinking of something, you can kind of go back and look through your notes, just browse through your notes and stuff about each character and everything that's kind of happened, or if just little events, whether they're quests or updates in the stats and stuff. They can give you inspiration on how to go forward, but they also give you reminders looking back. From linear to structure, rather than just focusing on moving forward in a straight line, you've got a structure now. You kind of know what's going on around you. You've got an omnidirectional view when you're like put a plan in place. And then from fragile to resilient, changes in one area don't collapse the entire story. And I mean that happens. You all of a sudden you get this great idea and you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then 2 chapters later, you're like, oh wait, oh no, that doesn't. Okay, gotta go back, change that. This is a great idea. Either I change this or I have to change all of that, kind of thing. So, architect metaphors. Blueprints first. No architect starts pouring concrete without plan, because no architect pours concrete either. But nobody goes to pour. No one goes to pour concrete or do anything without making some kind of valid plan first, even if it's just in your head. So, I mean, we all make plans in our head, but we only can store so much up here. And then sometimes it gets a little rusty and foggy, and then you forget things, or you get excited in the heat of the moment, and things just pass you by. But that's why we write them down. That's why we keep track of things. Foundation matters, making sure that a skyscraper needs deeper foundations than a cottage. Epic tales need deeper planning, and that is so true. I don't know how many times I've kicked myself for not writing down information and like little things to like help me remember where I'm going in a story, or things that have already happened, just all the stuff that I've been talking about. And then knowing all this allows you to really, really dive into your story. And then that's where precision enables art. Knowing all of it allows you to create some really cool stuff, because then it's like, when you go to write something, you just have whatever is in your mind. But if you have something to go back to look at with your notes, you can say, oh wow, yes, I have there's all this stuff I have to play with, all this information now that I can think going forward. What can I do next? How can I benefit the story? What kind of thing needs to happen in order to move the story forward? So yeah. The foundation, the 3 pillars: storyboards, story Bibles, and continuity. These 3 things make up the basics of building a story. Sure, anybody can write a story, and I mean, that's how I started, is just writing. But if you really want to build even a short tale, you want to know these things. Like, obviously, if you're writing a book, a single one-off book that's only got 50,000 words in it, and it's only got 25 chapters or whatever, or 50 chapters, then this stuff isn't really that important to you. But if you're writing something that's over 150, or at least 150,000 words or more, all this stuff is extremely important to you. And in this day and age, 150,000 is only like maybe 2 books. For me, it's 1 book. But for the average person, that's 2 books. And most series have at least 3 books, or maybe 4. And usually those ones have a lot more words in them. But even so, even if you're writing short series, you still want to be able to remember your storyboarding, because that helps you plan forward. Visualizing the narrative flow from the beginning to the end, identifying key structural moments, and ensuring each scene earns its place. Because you really want to make sure that you're not just adding fluff. Fluff is it's not needed. It's called fluff for a reason, right? We don't want to pad anything that we're writing, because we're telling a story. And when we're telling the story in the first person, we really just want, like, it's fine to have a lot of, or have interpersonal thoughts and everything, and thoughts on the situation and perspective and everything. And that's what's really important about first person. But we don't want to overdo that. We don't want to pad up the chapters by lots of thinking or internal monologue. We still want to be in the world, right? In the story. So beat sheets and outlines, chapter summaries, plot architecture. I'm not gonna lie. Every chapter that I write, I make a chapter summary. I figure out what I want to happen in the chapter. If it's only, that might only be just 3 1 sentence points. But as long as I have that idea, then I can seamlessly write the chapter without stopping. Just boom, I wrote in 1,500 or 2,000 words. Bang, that chapter's done now because I knew everything that was gonna happen. But I mean, you can't do that, or like, it's just importance of writing down everything and making sure that you're keeping notes and everything. And what does it take to keep a document where you have like chapter one, 1, 2, 3, 3 points about that chapter? Those are important because later on, if you have to go back and look to see about, or to try to look to see what the flow you're going through, you can just easily look through there and be like, oh yeah, this happened, right? You don't have to look through the chapter and like see everything and like trying to figure out what points and where this happened, because then you can easily see through those 3 points everything that happens in that chapter. So when you're looking back things, you just quickly, oh, it happened in this chapter. Okay, quickly flip over to the chapter. Now you know. Saves time. Story Bibles, creating a comprehensive reference document containing every established fact about your world, characters, and rules. I swear by this. I swear by book Bibles. They're the greatest thing in the world when it comes to any tale, especially epic tales. You keep your character profiles. Every one of my characters who is considered a main character or a heroine or somebody really close to the main character always gets one of these. World lexicon, things that are important in the world, but more importantly, things that are unique to the world. So if they have coffee there, well, coffee doesn't need to be in a lexicon. We know what coffee is. Everybody knows what coffee is. But if they have, say, loofah or leapcha, that's their coffee. Well, then we would put that in there because that's their type of coffee. World lexicons are kind of like the thesaurus for your story. And then rule documentation. If you've set out guidelines for something or set out stipulations, documenting all those rules and stipulations are very important because then you're not breaking your own rules. Again, this ties back to, at the end, continuity. Maintaining internal consistency across the entire narrative to the perspective. Oh, I'm sorry, Allie. Allie. Sorry. Allie. Allie. Hey. Hey. It's the phone. I'm in the middle of the street. Sorry about that. Anyways. No, Steel, stop infecting the chat. I got too involved going through this. Sorry about that. Do not listen to Steel, guys. Steel is one of my really, really good friends. He's one of my favorite I'm a D&D host, and he's one of my favorite D&D players. But we've known each other for about like 7 or 11 years. So one or the other. We're pretty close to the same age. He's not my kid. Anyways, back to the story. Or back to the, not the story, to the presentation. So back to continuity, maintaining internal consistency across the entire narrative to preserve reader trust and immersion in your world. So timeline tracking, events that happen. We do not want to repeat any events, and we don't want events that are conflicting with each other. That is why timelines are very important to keep track of. Knowing what happens in your story and in what order can really help you when you're deciding how to move forward. Character consistency. If somebody acts a certain way in chapter 5, well, then they need to continue on acting that way in chapter 35 unless they have a major character growth, right? And if there is a major character growth, there needs to be some kind of description on why that happened, right? We need to continually describe what happens and what makes things happen. And that's how continuity works. Everything needs to flow in a pattern, moves continuously. And if you have things that stop that continuous flow, then that also stops the reader dead in his tracks and completely ruins the immersion. And then the other part is geographic logic, remembering where places are and where people or when people have been to those places and events that are happening in those places. There's so many different things that are that continuity flows into. Everything that I talk about in this presentation will all boil back to continuity. Like that's why I made it at the very end of the everything to talk about, because this is what everything flows back into, is continuity. So these three pillars work together. Storyboarding gives you the structure, the Bible gives you the details, and continuity management ensures that it all holds together. So starting at the finish line, you can't pay or plan to pay off in chapter 1 if you don't know the twists in chapter 50, right? So this is starting at the finish line and the end in mind, means that like knowing big events that are going to happen in your story are so crucial. I always plan a story from the end. So I want to know where I'm going to, when I'm done this story, what is everything going to look like? What do I want my readers to feel at the end of it? And what do I want the scene to be like? What is the overall standing of the world? Like, is things better? Like, what is my goal and vision there? And then from there, I need to figure out the things that we can do, the different events to make this story interesting. And when we figure out a couple of those big events, only then can we decide where we're going to start the story. So before you write a single word of the prose, you must answer three fundamental questions. These answers become your North Star. You're guiding every creative decision, every plot twist, every character choice. What is the emotional destination? What feeling do you want the readers to have when they close the book? Hope, catharsis, wonder, tragedy. This emotional anchor guides every scene. What is the core twist or revelation? What is the truth that's revealed in the final act? What is the protagonist's hidden flaw? The villain's true motivation? The world's secret or history? Does every chapter earn its place? And that's important. And that falls back to where I was talking about fluff, right? If a scene doesn't move the plot or develop the character towards that ending, it's filler, and filler breaks the spell. As soon as you have to add things that are off the track or off the beaten track of the story, it's not to say that some filler isn't okay, but it's really never good, right? Because it's called filler and fluff because it's just additives, right? They're just fun little things. And I mean, instead of adding lots of filler, you're better off to finish the story and then add a side story with that filler in it. The little events or whatever, you see a lot of stories that do that. They have like their, I can't remember what they're called. They're not OSTs. But anyways, you know what I mean. Like they'll have like little side things after where they talk about little events that happened that didn't really make the main canon story. So the payoff principle: great stories plant seeds in early chapters that bloom in the finale, but you can only plant those seeds if you know what it will bloom. Example: if your ending reveals that the mentor was the villain all along, you need to drop subtle hints in chapters 3, 12, and 27. They don't have to be those chapters. They're just random chapters I picked. Let's just make that clear right now. Not just reveal it in chapter 48 with no foreshadowing. The rewriting reality. Readers who don't plan their endings often find themselves writing themselves into a corner, creating deus ex machina solutions, like things that just you just have to make everything work in some way or another, right? You're just adding things, basically plot armor to the story to make everything finally make sense. And it or disappointing readers with abrupt endings because you didn't plan for things, so things have to end sometimes in the middle of doing because that's just the way the story goes. So that's why it's really important to plan all that stuff. And then so now we're going to talk about the emotional North Star. Every great story has a specific emotional experience. So you always want you go into a story with some kind of idea of how your readers want, right? Somebody who reads Happy Go Lucky isn't going to go pick up a dark fantasy novel. They're just not, right? Nobody's going to subject themselves to that kind of torture if they don't have to, if it's not their thing. And I mean, I know lots of people who love dark fantasy. Um, but it isn't accidental. It's engineered from the first page. You want readers to be able to be set in that mood. You get a reader who's feeling like down or just hating the world and stuff. They're gonna want dark fantasy. Somebody's up and up. They're gonna want something happy and something cheerful, or something adventurous and fun. Um, your emotional North Star is the single feeling you want readers to carry with them long after the story ends. The common emotional destinations are hope, the triumph of the human spirit. Yeah, sure. Catharsis, emotional release through tragedy. Like, I feel empty, sort of. My emotions are all gone. That was a lot, kind of feeling. Oh, wonder. Whoa, that was wild. The awe and vastness of possibilities. Like, that was a story, man. I feel like I went to Mars and back with that stuff. Or justice. Finally, finally, you got it. Oh, just lovely to see him when those people get the backhand. Oh, damn thing. People get the full face slap. Or the villain finally gets stepped on, especially after he's being a real turd the entire book. You're just stewing the entire time, waiting for the villain to get his due. But I mean, that's what we want our readers, right? If the emotional North Star is justice, then we want our readers to stew, and we want our readers to really get emotional and like when the bad guy finally does get hit, it should be a payoff and a half for the readers in that sense. And for a hope, you want to like have a story that's literally feels like it's crushing you, but no matter what, they always seem to have hope and they just keep pushing through every situation. Wonder, you just have so many cool, awesome ideas, and that's where you get a lot of sci-fi or really like what is it called, high fantasy stories, where people put a ton of effort into making stories their own. Because like you have urban fantasy, which is based kind of in our reality, right, but with fantasy aspects, and then you have normal fantasy, which is just your basic common fantasy that we all use, like the tropes and whatever else, lit RPG and stuff, and whatever else, but we're still using human concepts that we already have in this world, right? So we're using the concepts of like elves and dwarves and crossbows and magic and cultivation and stuff. But then you have your high fantasy, which is the stack above, where you're creating new ideas for everything. You're not calling it coffee, you're calling it kombucha. And these aren't elves, they're Zidorians, right? Like, it's whatever you put the effort in. They don't look specifically like elves, but they're kind of like them. Or maybe they don't look like elves at all, or maybe there's something completely different, crack red skin or whatever. Doesn't matter. But the whole point of this is that we really want our readers to feel something when they're reading. You can't just because if they don't feel anything, then this isn't a story. This is just a report, right? That's the difference between a story and a report. A report is just an emotionless read of events that happened, right? Where a story is an emotional driven tale that's narrated by either a narrator or the person in the eye or in the eyes of the person telling the story. So that's where you get your first person, the eyes of the person telling the story, third person, narrator. So if you don't know what the emotion you're aiming for, you're just gonna hit everything except for the target you want, and it's gonna really confuse your writers. Like you start doing some dark fantasy, and then all of a sudden you know some hottie da fun, and oh everybody's best friends, and then next thing you know, stab in the back, and then you have a horror scene come in somewhere. And then the bad guy comes in to like pee right in your cornflakes. You know, just like just a whole smattering of things. That's why you really want to have that guiding North Star. And how the North Star guides decision, it gives character deaths. So if your North Star is hope, character deaths must serve a purpose. Sacrifice that enables victory, right? Because we want to. If we're gonna have sacrifice, then it's gotta you still need to be able to have hope that we're gonna be able to make that victory after. If it's tragedy, the death might be senseless. It might not even make sense. It could just be a random out of nowhere, right? Just bang, somebody gets shot. Just somebody walks up, bang, shoots him. No reason, no rhyme, runs away, and the other person's just left there, completely blown away and destroyed. And now the story has to move on without that other person in the person's life. And yeah, so it highlighting the cruelty of fate. Ending tones. A hopeful story will end with the protagonist looking towards a brighter future. Woo! A cathartic story ends with the acceptance of loss. So they've overcome everything. They understand. They've maybe there was some tragedy in this story, but they've overcome it. They're not holding it. It's not holding them back anymore. Wonder ends in a mystery that is still unfolding. It's like, and we'll just continue on searching the galaxy for more, right? But I don't really like those endings because they're really open ended and it makes me want more, which you'll probably never get. Plot complications. Every obstacle you throw at your character should test their ability to achieve the emotional destination. If you want hope, show them finding the light in the darkness. If you want tragedy, make sure that you don't let them have any sort of straight path ever. If you want wonder, you want new cool stuff coming all the time, but don't add new things all the time. You're going to confuse the heck out of your readers, and you're going to have a story Bible that's longer than your book. What is... Sorry, I'm just checking here. Some of the messages here. Oh, you don't like my wardrobe style? Steel? Come on. Well, that's true, right? But usually at the end, when you talk about a guiding North Star, like you can have all different kinds of emotions in a story, but a guiding North Star is about the main emotion, right? It's not. This isn't to say that your story's not can't have some cheerful moments. It can't have some sad moments. It can have some tragic moments or some wondrous moments. You can have all of that, but you're gonna keep your focus on hope or tragedy, whichever one you put. Right? You're allowed to have a range of emotions, right? But when we're telling a story, we usually are telling the story for a reason to get to the point of the story, which is the ending, right? And at the ending, we want our readers to feel something. The so what test. So this is one I like and I use quite often. This is your ruthless editing principle. For every scene, chapter, and subplot, ask, so what? Does this matter? What does this matter in the story? What does this do for my story? Does it drive my plot forward? Is it helping a character grow? What are we doing here? Right? So the two filler if it does, or if the answer doesn't satisfy if those questions, cut it. There's no point to have it there. You might think it was a cool thing and everything, but remember, we're telling a story. We're not doing long-winded explanations about things. We're telling a story, and that story has a focus and a path. It's cool to have all these things in the story, but remember, this story is a story, and stories all have a path that they follow. Right? Just like a hero has a journey. So the two question filter: does it advance the plot? Does something change does something change that moves the story towards the ending? Like, is this change gonna help with the story? Or are we just adding it in here because we think it's cool? Does it develop the character? Does it reveal, test, or transform the character? So if we're not building up the character or one of the people that are close in the character circle, in your main character group, and it doesn't advance the plot in some way, then it's filler. It's not necessary for the story, and you do not need it in there. The common filler traps are travel montages that show nothing new. If you are going from point A to point B and nothing in that point or in between those times shows any sort of growth other than a couple conversations, if those conversations aren't absolutely important for the reader to know, then just move to the next point. And if there is a conversation that's important, do what is it called, a recap, like, or a reflection. Have somebody reflect on that moment, or have your main character reflect on that moment, that scene, and have that scene play out with like a small like line break, then add your scene, line break, and then go back to him, just like an internal moral or internal memory. It's really bad to keep people like drilling on with things. Like, I know it sounds interesting, you have a really cool system and you want to show it off to everybody, but there's more to the story than just your system. And we all have to remember that as writers, is that we get really excited about certain ideas and everything, and then we kind of get lost in them. Character discussions of what reader already knows. Repeating what somebody says. So, if you just thought something, if you're not saying it different, there was no reason to describe that it was thought that way, right? Unless you have an internal monologue that's different than the way it's speaking, there's no reason to repeat what you're saying. So that's something that people couldn't remember. And then side quests that don't remember the main arc. Those are, again, for side stories. That's why they're called side quests. Unless something important happens there, or there's some big character development, filler. The fix. Or combine scenes. If you need to get character from A to B, make the journey itself a test of their resolve. They need to share information, have them argue about it, revealing character while conveying facts. So you can show more about the characters and give them more chance to either regress or grow, right? Because not every character moves forward. I mean, it's great that people grow and stuff, but that's not the way that we work. We don't always move forward. Sometimes we get frustrated and we regress. We go back to the ways that we were, and the ways that we were before we moved forward at all, right? So our characters kind of need to reflect that too, unless there's some omniscient, perfect, God knows everything kind of person. But that's not fun, and that's not interesting, right? People like reading about humans, and they like reading about people who make mistakes. But there needs to be reason for those mistakes and why they make those mistakes. And then we need to grow from that, because, just because you or your friend or Tom, Dick, or Harry doesn't seem to want to grow from their bad habits, people want to read people who want to grow. And you want people to read about people who are growing, because you don't want people to continue on doing their bad habits. One responsibility as a writer is not to write bad habits and then keep them that way, right? Is to write, like when you're writing a story, you want to. It's perfectly fine to write a stupid character and have them being really oblivious to a lot of things. And maybe in the end, they're still oblivious to some things and everything, but there needs to be growth. People don't want to read about somebody who doesn't have any growth and just continues to be the same obstinate, grouchy person the entire story, right? So, like I was saying, filler breaks the spell. Readers don't are remarkably patient until they're not. Right? We all know this. Filler signals that you don't respect their time. Right? They've come down, they've sat here. Sometimes they're buying individual chapters to read, or sometimes they bought your whole book, or maybe they're just reading for free. Regardless, they're taking time out of their day to do this. So people are usually good about it. And they makes a mistake or two, and then the whole world crashes down, and you're all of a sudden a horrible person, whatever else. But so that's why we have to kind of work on Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will go, or if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. So try to make sure you cover all your ends. Every chapter should be a promise kept. If chapter 1 sets up mystery, chapter 50 should resolve it, if that's the end of your book, right? Everything, or we're considering that chapter 1 to 50 right now is like a book from beginning to end. Everything in between this journey and every step in the journey must feel necessary. Like you want to make sure that everything you have in there is going forward. The brutal truth. Some of your favorite scenes might be filler. God, I hate how true this is. I hate how true this is. And sometimes you just let it slide. But we need to be it's fine to let it slide every once in a while. Filler is it's a word because it exists, right? And it's not a bad thing, but it's not something that you can have a lot of. Um, but you should really focus on trying to keep the story moving forward on the story and move away from filler almost completely if you can. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not helpful to the story, and it's not helpful to the reader moving forward in the story. So, the next section we're going to talk about is visualizing the journey, transforming an abstract idea into a tangible, hair in my mouth, navigable story structure. Beat sheets, your story's tent poles. Every story needs these tent poles. The beat sheet is your story's skeleton, the major structural moments that hold everything together. These are the load-bearing pillars of your narrative architecture. So, the essential beats is your opening image. And we're not talking about an actual picture. This isn't your cover, although that is kind of like an opening image that everybody sees. But the before snapshot of your protagonist's world. Like, the image, as soon as somebody gets into the story, where are we starting in the story? What is the view that you have when you look into the story? Like, if I'm starting on chapter 1 and I'm reading, like, here, we'll just use my book as an example here. I'm not trying to whatever, but Kaz Foreman, it says here you were supposed to be a pro athlete. What happened there? The recruiter asked me as I sat across the desk from him. He didn't look up for his file. His eyes scanning the lines of my history like he was looking for a reason to say no. So immediately you know that this person is sitting across the desk. Ew, what is that on the back of that? This person is sitting across the desk from somebody getting questioned about something. A recruiter, so there's something to do with the Army. Right? So immediately we have an image of where we are in the world right now. The inciting incident, and this needs to happen usually in the first 3 chapters, right? Like something usually could happen in the first chapter, could happen in the second, but it usually should happen by at least the third. We should have some sort of incident that really like brings us into the story, right? Why we're here, right? Something happened and boom, now we have a reason to tell this story and get to this finish, the ending that we already planned out. Then your first plot point, right? Then that moves into your first plot point, right? And that's why this is so important, because this plot point, inciting incident is really now there's no turning back in the story, right? You have to continue for this character needs to move forward and they need to continue to have a reason to move forward to keep the story moving. Then your midpoint, you have a false victory or devastating revelation that shakes everything. It's like you just finished beating the bad guy, but then you realize he's just a henchman, or maybe even though you won the battle, you're still a war to fight, right? Like those kind of things. And then Dark Knight of Souls, the lowest point, when all hope seems lost, when everything is crushing down, when the blade is coming within a centimeter of the person's eye, that when everything feels like it's gonna be end, what are you gonna do with that moment, right? What are you gonna do with that deep soul crushing moment where you have the reader on the edge of their seat? And the climax, right? Dead again, that builds that. Now we move in from the darkest night. Now we move to the climax. What is the big build up at the end of the story? Like where's a final confrontation? Where does everything come to a head? And then the resolution, the after snapshot of showing the transformation of everything that's happened in the story and what all that turns into. What does that all translate into, and what does it transform into? Why the beat matters? The beats are not formula; they're structural necessities. They're building needs, foundations, walls, roof, a story that building needs, foundation, walls, and a roof. A story needs these moments to feel complete. So, pacing control. Beats ensure that your story doesn't peak too early or drag on. You don't want to immediately have, say, Dark Knight of Souls, where immediately in the 10th chapter, the whole world is crushing down, and now all of a sudden we need that, Super Saiyan instinct moment where we recover and take everybody out, right? That's way too early in the story. And we also don't want the inciting incident to be on chapter 40 if the book's 50 chapters long. Because what are you doing for those other 40 chapters? The reader expectations. These moments satisfy the structure or the psychological need for structure. So you build up reader expectation, right? By putting these different points, because almost every reader has read more than one story, right? These aren't just something that I've just made up, right? These are talking points that happen in almost every story that you read. If you look through a story and you look at the essential beats, these tent poles, every story has them. Every popular or big story has them in almost every volume that they write or book. We call it, as web novels, we call them volumes. As an author, published, or paperback, you call them a book. But these are all very important, and readers will expect these things. So they deliver, right? And having this structure allows you to deliver those things to the readers, and knowing that you're going to keep on moving forward. And that's because if you don't have them and you're not getting readers, well, now you kind of do know why you don't have as many readers as you should. Because maybe it's not that you're not writing a good story. It's maybe that it's just you haven't properly structured it. And you haven't kept it good enough, or you haven't made the events work in proper timing with our pacing control. And then the last thing is revision roadmap. If the beat is weak, you know exactly where to focus, right? And that's what I just talked about, is if your story isn't doing very well, well, now you can go back and focus on those points, figure out which point isn't working, and how you can fix that to help improve your story. Because like I said, not every story is bad. Sometimes there are bad stories. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Get used to it. It happens all the time. I write lots of bad stories, and then we just move on, do a new one. But figure out it's a bad story before you publish it, right? Get 100 chapters. Some people want to get 10 or 30 chapters and then just get it published, right? Get it somebody to contract it. I do not suggest that. As a person who's contracted many books, don't do that. I'm not here to try to give you too much advice on that situation, but if I can say anything, get 100 to 150 chapters down and figure out if this is going to be a good story. Is it going to be worth your time to continue on moving forward? Don't waste your time on something and get yourself set up for defeat only to just disappoint everybody. Because if you put out a story and then you don't want to continue writing, you're going to be like me and have a whole bunch of half-finished stories. And now I got to go back and finish all of them at some point. So yeah, beat cheat exercise. One writes write for your story. Write one sentence for each beat. So one sentence for what the opening line is, for the inciting incidents, yada 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 yada. And if you can't, you don't know your story well enough yet. Keep refining each until every beat feels inevitable. So it feels like the reader knows it's gonna happen. So it's like it's not that they just know and they're bored. It's like a boring thing. It's they know and they expect it, and then when it hits, they get that psychological payoff, right? The thing that readers love, that little hit of serotonin. All right, let me check on the check. And then, I'm not dressed up, but it's just comfortable. I like it. Leave me alone. I like Demon Slayer. I'm a nerd. You can't tell. I have lots of nerdy things around me. All right. So there's any questions here? Yeah, everything looks good so far. Okay, hop back. Ugh. Although it is really annoying because it catches on my thing. I didn't really expect that as much. All right, chapter summaries. The two-sentence rule. Before you write a single paragraph of prose, write a two-sentence summary for every chapter. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of our little presentation. This forces clarity of purpose and ensures each chapter contributes meaningfully to the whole. So, two-sentence structure. Sentence 1, the what. What happens in this chapter? What events occur? What information is revealed? What actions are taken? Right? Example, the protagonist discovers a hidden letter revealing their mentor's betrayal. Sentence 2, the so what? Right? We talked about this. The so what? Does it matter? Does it move the story forward? Is it helping the character? Why does this matter? How does the chapter move, or how does this chapter move the plot or develop the character towards ascending? Example, this revelation forces the protagonist to question everything they believe, setting up for the crisis of faith in chapter 15. So it also helps you kind of like get ready for something, or get ready for something for yourself to know that you have this plan for, or waiting for, or going forward. So in chapter 15, now you know you're going to be making this reveal, right? But just having these like two lines, they're a really big help in the long run. If you can't explain the chapter's purpose in 2 sentences, you don't understand it well enough to write it, right? And that just means you're a pantser. You're writing by the seat of your pants again. The benefits of chapter summaries are structural clarity, seeing your entire story at a glance, identifying weak spots before you write them, pacing awareness, spot chapters that are too dense or too thin, and adjust accordingly. Revision efficiency. When something needs to change, you know exactly which chapters are affected. Again, it's like I was talking in the beginning. It's just being able to quickly look through there. It's so easy to find your information, especially if you have like long-winded chapters. Just having those two things to know what that chapter is about. And then the other point is, if you cannot summarize the chapter in those 2 sentences, that means it's more than one chapter, right? A chapter is an event, is something that happens. Now, you might have different views during that event. You might have, say, somebody has something happening there. Say they're at a or somebody's at a festival and they're going to do an argument or whatever, and then the scene splits off to something else, and it may be something completely different, but it relates to what is going to happen. Maybe it's foreshadowing going forward to some event that's going to happen in the next chapter, right? But that's all part of the same event. If you cannot describe it in one or in the what in that one sentence, then you have more than one chapter here, and you have to figure out what you're going to do about that. So, as you can see, and then writer's block prevention. If you know everything that happens in your story, and you kind of have a better idea of everything that's going on, and then you're a lot less likely to get writer's block. Or when you do, you can just look back through your very easily notes, the what and plus so what. So you just quickly look through those little bit of notes, and you're like, oh well, I could go talk about this, or oh, that's right, I was supposed to move forward with this, yada yada yada, right? Those little things that we add and then forget about later. I don't do that. We all do it, right? It's just the natural thing, especially when you're writing a long epic. Below, this is just a summary, the chapter summary document. This is just kind of like a little thing. I do this. I usually write a lot more than just 1 or 2 points. But if you don't like writing a ton about each chapter, and you don't like writing big summary plots and like preparing big storyboards, the what and so what, just 2 sentences, is a very easy way to just quickly jot down and then keep a very accurate memory of everything that happens in your book. So now we're going to move to the yes, but, no, and rule. This is the engine of narrative momentum. Every scene must end with either a partial victory with a cost or a failure with escalating consequences, right? So whenever we hit the end of the scene, what does that end mean? Did we accomplish something, right? We don't have to fully accomplish something, but are we moving towards accomplish something, or did we accomplish something? Or are we failing at something? Or are we moving towards failing at something, right? So yes, the hero succeeds, but at a price. The victory is partial, temporary, or costly. So he won, but everybody else died. That's not good. But the story still has to keep going. My other example is a little better. The hero escaped the dungeon, but the best friend is captured. The no end, the hero fails, and things only get worse from there. The situation escalates, complications arise. Example, the hero fails to disarm the bomb and destroys a hospital. Woo. The forbidden ending. Never end a scene with a simple yes or no. That is a full stop. It's like, yes, that's how it goes. Well, we leave every scene unless the story is done and it's over, there should be some sort of intrigue at the end of every scene, some sort of pull to make the reader want to move forward, right? You don't want to just have a straight yes or no to a scene. You want to give them some sort of direction. Why this works? It maintains tension. We want to be able to have every scene create a new question. The reader must keep reading to find out what happens next, right? We want them to keep going in the story, so we got to give them a reason. Pull them forward. Play psychological games, whatever you have to. But that's a part of writing a story. It's a bit of a psychological game. That's why we have all these different building blocks and stuff. They're not just something sure, I'm doing this presentation, but this is all information that you either learn in school or you just get from learning from other people. Prevents easy solutions. If success comes too easy, there's no struggle. Nobody wants. I am so bad for this by not making enough struggle in my stories, and then my stories don't do good. Because I'm a wiener and I try to make everything good. Nobody cares. Nobody wants fun, lucky. For the longest time, I thought maybe that was what reader wanted. Maybe that's what I wanted. But I hadn't spent enough time listening to books. And if I can suggest anything to people, it's to listen to books. You want to be a writer? You want to be an author? then you need to understand why people love books, right? If you want to write in dark fantasy, then you need to list some dark fantasy books and understand why people read them, right? You want to read or you want to write lit RPG? Get on it, right? Shadow Slave, My Vampire System. There's lots of great examples all over. There's some that cost money, and there's tons that are free, right? But listening and reading books is a very, very important thing or part of being a writer is understanding. It also helps you understand the current market or the current market demographic. That's right. I'm gonna get words out today. And to see what people are reading, right? It's awesome. You want to write about, say, egg system, whatever, dark fantasy. But is anybody actually reading that? Or are you just going to be banging your head against the wall when you write this awesome story that nobody's going to read because it's stuck in a niche thing that nobody's into right now? So, then, another reason why having all these or the yes and no works is that it creates a domino effects. Each scene's consequences become the next scene's complication, right? So what or if like say somebody or your main character kills a bad guy, but this releases a deadly plague onto the world, now your next scene is how that all turns out, right? So you have your next complication, right? And then you have to move forward to solve that complication. And either that's the end of your story or we're going to need more complications going forward. So we need more consequences. So we need to have more fixes and more consequences so we can have more complications. It's just how the story goes. So but this also helps the story build organically. If you kind of can just say, well, this was caused by this, which was caused by this, which was caused by this. That's why we build the story backwards. So it's a lot easier to foreshadow all these events coming and make them sound way cooler to the reader. Like you're some freaking idiot savant that just knows everything and you just wrote this story like a god. Right? And that's how we feel sometimes when we're readers, when we're reading some of these really well thought out stories. And they're not just well thought out, they're well written out, they're well planned. Like somebody took a lot of effort, put a lot of different things into play in order to make this story make you go, whoa, that was freaking awesome. and the next thing, the final thing is by leaving consequences and complications, you're gonna force character growth. A lot of times it's about you're trying to figure out how you can make your character grow, but sometimes this just by doing this process of or pinging one thing off another allows the character your story to grow the character by itself. You're just like, oh well, yeah, this is a character growth moment. Oh, look at me, we just got this, awesome, right arm. So yeah, again, this is why it's so important. Why the yes but and or no or yes but no and rule is so important. It ensures your story is a river, not a pond, because we do not want a story that just sits still, right? We want a story that continuously moves forward. We want it to flow all the way to the sea, so we can finally get to our destination, or the reader can at least. All right, so that's the end for talking about that stuff. So now we're gonna move on to chapter 4. The Bible study. Oh boy. We're gonna move on to the story Bibles, your single source of truth for everything that exists in your world. Oh, darn it. What did I do now? I screw everything up. Did I fix it? Okay, it's good now. Okay. So, what is a story Bible? Besides my favorite thing in the whole world, the story Bible is a living document that you're constantly updating that contains every established fact about your world. It's your definitive reference, your single source of truth that prevents contradiction, memory lapse, and continuity errors. Think of it as a database. Every fact searchable and organized, right? It's easy to find stuff because you have it all sectioned off, and you usually have like characters. That's all in one section. And I usually have mine on the side. I don't know if you guys use Google Docs, but I have the little tab. And then if you use your headings, if you use heading 3, that's the big one. You can make it really big, and then you use heading 2, and it'll make it go under that heading, so you can have a little tab, and you can have all that information that you want all stacked up nicely. And so you can just kind of close all the tabs, and then all you have is like a document that's like this big with all your little things. And then boom, wham, you can get at any of that information. Oh, you want characters? Open up characters. You find your specific character, right? You find their name, and you click their name, and it opens up. It sounds really complicated, but these are absolutely simple things that you can do just by hitting like Control Alt 1, 2, and 3. That's how you set your headings after you copy and paste, or after you highlight them. Yeah, one thing you're using, learn to use hotkeys if you're gonna type. They're really, really helpful. So, and we'll continue on moving, so I don't get too sidetracked here. Think of it also as a guardian. Protects consistency and continuity. So every time you're worried about something, you can look back and quickly find out information about what you're working on right now, or how this affects moving forward and how it affects the past. Internal memory, because we only have so much room up here, right? Freeing your mind, it basically just frees your mind to like just focus on how you want to make this story cool, right? The creative part of the story. You don't need to fill your mind with all those backlogs and how the magic system works, and what color's Fred's eyes, or what Velma's hair color was, what color Daphne's freaking shoes are, right? Like, maybe you don't have that specific, but I mean, it can be important if you're using somebody who says, like, you know how how Scooby-Doo is, everybody has the same costume on the entire time. That's important, right? If you don't see a character very often and they're in an army getup all the time, well, they have to continuously stay in that army getup unless they're in civilian clothes, and then they have to have a reason for it. And then the final one which is not as important, because not a lot of people have collaborators, but it's not unheard of, so I thought I'd talk about it as well. If you're working on a project with another person, and this kind of works with editors too, like, it is good for editors, because because then they're not wasting time when they're just quickly going through. If they see something that doesn't make sense, they shouldn't have to go back and look through your entire story to find out why it doesn't make sense, right? They should be able to just quickly jump over to the other document and say, hey, oh, yeah, that's right. See, no, it was supposed to be this way, not that way. Rather than wasting a whole bunch of time looking through the documents and getting really frustrated, because, you know, I have literally been saying since I started, one thing that I forgot to bring out is my notebooks. I have a bunch of notebooks that before I really started keeping my book Bibles on the computer, I kept my book Bibles as literal handbooks, like literally notebooks the size of, notebooks the size of this, filled with freaking writing. Yes, that's Monster Girl Encyclopedia. So, point is, your brain is for creating, not for remembering. I mean, it can remember, but we have fingers, and we have the ability to articulate our words and put them down on paper, or save them on the cloud, right? Well, we can do that. Our mind is a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful thing because it can create things. It can think of new things. Your hands and your eyes and all that other stuff, they're just there for what they're supposed to do. The Bible grows with your story. You don't create a Bible all at once. You start off by picking who your character is going to be and the information about them and their tendencies. It's really important to write down a person's tendencies. If they have a little, like, they rub the back of their neck a lot, or raise an eyebrow a lot, or pinch their brow a lot, or pinch the bridge of their nose, or do the glasses bump, those things should be recorded, right? Because those are like little things about your character. I can't remember what the actual terminology for that is right now. I'm sure somebody will tell me in a second, but yeah, the story Bible is the reason why it's called a Bible is because it serves the same purpose as a Bible does for people, or the Quran or whatever. That is their truth, right? The Bible is the Christian's truth. The Quran is a Muslim's truth. Like those are all your truths, and the story Bible is the truth of your world, the truth of your story, right? That you're creating. So like I said, it evolves. So pre-writing established the foundational rules, which are very, very important. You have different rules about your world, different magical or parts of the magical system. Maybe like certain people hate other people, or there's a war going on. And the character basics, like not only what I just talked about with your main character, but that also applies to other people. I have like a set of characters called Tag and Sig from my book Epic and B, and I modeled them after Bill and Ted. Like, yeah, right on kind of dudes. And so that's something I every once in a while I kind of forgot about, and then I just have to keep on reminding myself. But it's all there, right? I have it in my story Bible. I just quickly look back and boom, it's there. I know everything about it. World geography. If you have certain, again, like I said, wars going on, different things happening. Uh, whatever, like if there's certain conflicts, wars, events happening, or events that are going to happen. These are all things that are easy to write down and just have them there so you can look back. And like I said before, when you run into a story block, you look back at these things and you're like, oh yeah, I have this thing that's supposed to be coming up that I said was going to happen. So I probably should do something about that. And it doesn't always work like that, but it is a solid way to help prevent writer's block. And Murphy's Law says if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. I'll say this numerous times. It's one of my favorite laws in the universe. Murphy's Law means if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. That means if you give anything an option to go wrong, then it's not if it will go wrong, it's when it'll go wrong. During the drafting, it helps out a lot. Whenever you add new characters, locations, rules as they're changed, you can look back. You can kind of take a look at your whole story by looking at your story Bible and say, "Hey, is this character really important? Do they even matter to this? Should they even be here? Are people are even gonna like this person, like this personality? Does it really fit with everything else I'm doing with the story?" And you can do that with events, your characters, the world geography, all that stuff. But if you don't write it all down and you don't keep track of that stuff, you don't really, it's not easy to visualize everything without having something mentally in front of you. Everybody works differently, but I think it doesn't matter really which way you work, having a story Bible will help you in the long run. During revisions, it's absolutely essential when you're doing revisions because again keeping your story straight and continuity is very, very important, especially when you're doing revisions and if you're changing something in chapter 35, right, where you decide you're going to rewrite this chapter, right? Well, now you haven't wrote this chapter in like 15 chapters, so now are you going to remember everything that happened between 35 and 50, and then you also remember everything that happened between chapter 1 and chapter 35, because that's important. If something happened between either one of those spots, it could affect how this chapter ends up, right? So, and then the sequels. You're going to write a new book, you're going to want a next part to the book. You can either A, add to your current story Bible, or B, start another one. I suggest starting another one and just copying over the information that's needed. Don't copy over all the information, because if you have more than one book in a series, a lot of times not every character from the first book is going to be in the second book, and sometimes you're going to have new characters. So starting a new story Bible is important, or is probably the best bet for a second story. So what it is a living it's a living document principle. Your Bible is never finished, right? If your story, until your story is completely finished and all the side stories are finished, right? Until that is done, then maybe your Bible is finished. But with fan fiction, who knows? It's not like fan fiction is not really gonna affect it or anything, but fan fiction does. There's a reason why it's fan fiction. It's because it's ideas that other people have about the story, and sometimes people have great ideas. Sometimes you're like, I want to add that into my story. Like that was awesome. And maybe I'll do another arc, or maybe I'll do another series. No, that. So yeah. So but biggest thing is treat it like a companion, not like it's a chore to do, not like it's something you have to do. You will thank yourself after. You will pat yourself on the back when you get to chapter 365 or 1162 or 2365. You will pat yourself on the back over and over again. You'll be like, damn, I'm so glad I wrote all that stuff down, because oh my god, there's so much that I had to look through the entire roll of this story. So that's very important. The essential components, character profiles. Every major character deserves a comprehensive profile. This isn't just a physical description, it's a psychological blueprint. And this is what I was saying about the very first talk about your main character. Is a guide to how they act, think, and how they're going to grow. You want to make sure that you keep notes on this, because you want to keep true to the character, right? So if you have a person who's an irritable arse and they want to be rude and mean, but you want them to grow into somebody sort of respectable and not as bad, well, that you want to keep that path, right? You don't want them to immediately just become a happy-go-lucky, or like all of a sudden break character and just start crying about everything, right? And those are important. Like, that's obviously a simple mistake, but like, you can, very small little things, right? People, I stop reading stories all the time. There's way too many books out there to read crappy books, is what I always say. But I stop reading books all the time for this exact reason, because the character, the psychological blueprint does not match up to to the character I was introduced to, right? The character starts all of a sudden acting erratically, and the way that they were introduced to me and their growth path that was shown to me as a reader doesn't make sense 2 chapters later, or 20 chapters later, or 300 chapters later, right? And that's why that's so important, or it's so important. The complete character profile, it's got its physical traits and distinguishing features: height, build, age, hair, eye color, scars, tattoos, clothing styles, mannerism, what makes them visually memorable, right? All the things that like help you really describe your characters. When like and why these are important is because you can use them as just simple ways rather than saying somebody's name all the time. Or when you're like describing, say if they have a tattoo on their arm, you can say, and when his arm flexed, I could see the light or glitter, or the water reflect off the ocean and glittered across the tattoo on his forearm, right? And you can add a little more description than that bit there, but it adds more to your details. Psychological profile, the flaws and fears. Again, this one is very, very important. What are their insecurities? What trauma shaped their behavior? What are they most afraid of, and why? Knowing these things can help you plan so many different scenes just by having this little bit of information, whether it's your main character or people around your main character. Secret motivations and hidden backstories. What do they want that they won't admit? What past events drive their present actions? What are they hiding? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, but again, they're just more plot points going forward. And just knowing this stuff is just, again, helping you prevent writer's block. Growth arc. Before, during, and after. How are they how are they at the story start? What transformation do they go to? What do they do they go or undergo? What do they become at the end? And this is important for the people close to the main character, but it's really not as important for the outside people and the outside characters and stuff. People you're just adding to the story. But you're really not building character profiles for anybody but the people who are important to the main character or to the main plot of the story. Why detailed profiles matter. Consistency in voice. The characters will with a fear of heights shouldn't casually climb a tower without some kind of internal conflict, right? Behavioral discussion, believable discussions. The character must act accordingly to their established psychology, not plot convenience. Do not use plot armor unless you absolutely have to. It's like that's for anime stuff, right? Save me at the last moment by like the power of friendship. Sure, it can happen. Well, no, it can't happen. But if you're gonna write a fantasy story, and if you're gonna do it, at least have it be a little bit believable. Satisfying growth. Transformations feel earned. Then, when we have a character profile built up, then and the reader understands this without reading the actual character profile, then when they grow and they transform, then it feels earned. They're like, yeah, finally. I've been waiting for him to like grow past this point, or I'm waiting for him to like master this skill. You know, it's just that, again, psychological payoff to the reader. That little serotonin shot. Zing. Whew, my throat. Give me a second here. I need to see if there's any questions while I take a quick. This taking a little longer than I anticipated, but I feel like it's going good. Also, thank you very much, Victor, for answering questions while I'm just kind of zoned in on this. I really, really appreciate it. Right on, man. And great job with modding. Awesome. Sure, just give me a second. So unless they're a recurring character, there's no need to add them to the story Bible. Yep, absolutely not. If your character, if the character is not going to be, if they're just going to come into one scene and they're going to interact with the scene and then leave your book forever after that, there's absolutely no reason to keep them, right? Because there's no need for the continuity other than maybe keeping a single note about them. If you want to make they only matter if you think you're going to make reference to them later on, right? If you're going to make reference to them later on, then you need to have a little bit of information about them. So when you make the reference, you can say, oh, Tony. Well, who's Tony, right? Well, he's the guy with the fedora hat and like the white tuxedo, right? That guy. Oh, Tony. Right? And that's why it's really important. Well, glad I grabbed this energy drink. They got the extra large white peach edition. It's so good. Not as good as the acai one, the blueberry acai, which tastes like freaking candy. Like every generic candy ever. Right on. Alright. We're gonna get that off there. Okay, so satisfying growth. We were just on. So the last one is surprising yet inevitable. So when something, when you built something to happen, it can still be surprising when the people know what the profile is. You can still surprise people even though they knew it was going to happen just by building that profile and saying that they're going to do this. When you have a plan in play, you can really like build up to that moment, to that plan. So there, even though it was inevitable, it was gonna happen. The reader's like, "Oh, wow, that's something," or "Oh no, good lord, no, 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 don't do that," kind of thing, right? The profile template. Create a template with a section for each category. Like I was saying before, if you're using Google Docs, I don't. Everybody uses something different. I use a bunch of different programs. I'm actually using Libre right now, which I use only for doing my presentations on, and when I'm putting my story or when I'm breaking my story down to a paperback, just because of the way that the page setup is. But for the rest of it, it sucks for like tabs and stuff. I mean, they're there, they work, they're just not the same. Google Docs is really good because you use the three headings, and the three headings act like tabs within tabs. So if you use heading 3, the biggest one, it will create a tab on the side, and then heading 2 will be that information, and then your smaller headings inside can be the information. Heading 1 can be your smallest one, and that one tells you, or can be to open up the small information inside. So it's like you have their skills or whatever, and or like class or system or magic powers or freaking, I don't know, whatever it is, right? You can have it all broken down and crushed into one tiny little thing. So maybe you really want, at the end of it all, you really want your entire story Bible to look like a table of contents. You just want it to look like a small or like if you were to open it up and just look at it, it should just only be one page, maybe 2 pages if you got lots of different things. But it should only be a page of different categories, right? So characters, plot, yada 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 yada. Whatever is needed in your story, whether it's rules, magic system, whatever, right? Break those down and then put everything inside them and then break all that information down. Sounds like a lot of work. And you know it is, but writing the story is a lot of work. And you know what's even more work? Having to go back and look and trying to find all that information after. So it's better to put in the extra work now. So essential components. I am gonna work with speaking today. It's gonna happen. The lexicon and rule book. I love that word, lexicon. Your world's unique language, the terminology, the slang, the titles, the naming conventions. Consistent language creates immersion. Inconsistent language breaks it. And this is just so important in high fantasy, especially when you're creating things that don't exist, right? In any story, if you create something that doesn't exist, you need to have some sort of description or information about it. And a lot of times you only want to be able, you want to have to only describe that once. And some books, a lot of high fantasy books will have some sort of lexicon inside them, some sort of character thesaurus or whatever, or world thesaurus, where it has all the different words and what they mean. Um, the importance of this is the unique terminologies, like I said, magic systems, technology, cultural concepts. Define them clearly and use them consistency. If we have them all written down, then they just have it ingrained in your mind. Like, sure, we try to remember everything, but sometimes we like to get a little complicated and we like to put in a little caveats here and there, and we don't remember them all. And nothing worse than saying something goes one way and then have it go another. Because that's what breaks the immersion. Slangs and dialects. Do you have a certain like thing that are there certain gods that everybody uses for curse words? Do you have different curse words? Do you have different sayings you use for praying? All these are all things. Like, do a certain people in certain areas talk a certain way? Do they have different accents? All these things are very, very important, and they help really keep the immersion whole. Like the lexicon and rulebook are really, really important, or really important to help keep a reader immersed in your story, to keep them turning the pages. As long as they're immersed in the story, they're going to be turning the pages. I got to watch one thing that was really cool. I got to watch one reader. This was last week. He started reading at 9:30. He was reading my Pokemon fanfic. He started reading at 9:30 in the morning, and he read for 3 days straight from 9 o'clock till what was it, 11 o'clock at night for 3 days. But I got to watch him do that every day. I'm like, that he must really have been hooked by the story. Like there's some good like everything about the story kind of pulls the reader through, right? To keep the because the story has to be good if they're going to be there for that long. So that's why we really want to work on immersion. We want that reader just to sit there and sniff up those chapters, just eat them all up and get caught up to the current stuff so they can see what you're putting out next. Because that's what you want people to be looking at. What you're writing now. It's awesome to like have them read everything else and stuff, but you've already read all that stuff. You already written you read all that, wrote all that. You want them to like check out my new stuff. Maybe leave a comment or two. Little next is the titles and forms of address, right? Are Duke whatever, or do you refer them as a son, or are you is it Steel Son, or is it Lady Steel? You deserve that. Uh, so yeah, those things are important. And then naming conventions. How are names constructed or structured? Are we just using Daniel Coulter, like just basic first name last name, or is it like in Asian languages where it uses last name then first name? We go surname then for a given name. Or do we have like where they say the whole name as one, where you would say instead of Daniel Coulter, you say Daniel Dean Coulter or Xing Mao Peng, right? Those are important, right? You can't have one person in this area named that and have everybody else from that area named something else. But that guy's always been here. He's never left or anything. We just call him that because why do we call him that? Right? So that's for the lexicon. The rule book, on the same note, but on the different on the same coin, just on the other side, is how does your world systems actually function? How does the magic system work? How do the actual rules work? How do the laws of gravity work or physics? Period. Right? Does everybody know about gravity? Is it a thing? Does it work the same? Is it the same intensity as ours? They're all small things. So first, magic system. What can magic do? What are the costs? Who can use it? What are the limitations? So, then technology. What is possible? What's not? How reliable is it? Does it blow up every second time you use it, or is it like freaking Iron Man, where it literally just like just flies onto you as you're walking, just like some just Lieutenant or Corporate Mundo walking down with the armor flying on you? Political systems. This is a big one. And I don't feel like enough people put enough effort into this, even though most people hate politics. And it's fine to hate politics, but if you're going to write a story and you're going to have any sort of government or town, you really need to focus on this because this is important. And the politics of a story aren't just all about what the mayor of the town decides or the council is talking about, right? It's how one nation deals with another and how people in one town interact with another. Those are the politics of things. So knowing that is really important. Then finally, the economic system is how things are traded. Does person A sell to person B? Is it sold with coins? Are these gold? What are they made of? What are they called? Are they Rupal? Are they Ryu? Are they toes? Are they goblin ears? Who knows, right? But these are all important. And do we know certain areas of the world that have certain things, right? Like, does this area make bread? Does this place have rice, right? Because those are like, just like our world, there are certain things that are only made in certain parts of the world. We don't have rice farms over here in North America. I mean, maybe we do, but definitely not like there is over in the middle, or over in like China and whatever else. So the golden rule: establish your rules early, so then you don't have to worry about breaking them later on, and always follow them. Right? You set these rules, so you follow them. They're your rules. Readers will forgive impossible things in your rules, but they will not forgive inconsistency. This is just bare bones of everything. You can make you can make readers believe some pretty, like, throw out their brains a lot of times when they're reading, but the moment you become inconsistent about something or you break your own damn rules, they're coming for you. They're coming for you. So why is a Bible critical? Well, we're kind of already going over that, but mental RAM. Your brain has a limited amount of working memory, and it does. Some of us way more limited than others. I'm pretty limited. I got like squirrels running around in here. Every fact you try to remember is cognitive load that you could be spent on creativity, right? The more you have to think about how you're keeping the circus running in your head, the less time you have to figure out how to make the circus even interesting. You just spend your entire time trying to wrangle it. The Bible remembers so you can create. Internalize the trivia and externalize the trivia and internalize the art. Then the next part is consistency at a scale, right? For long-running series or multi-point of views stories, consistency becomes exponentially harder later on. And it does. It becomes absolutely wild. And you end up spending more time just looking information up than you spend on writing the chapters. And I am a perfectly good example of this. So my Pokemon book, and I keep on going back to that, but that's the one I'm working on right now. My Pokemon book, I did not keep a proper story Bible. I do have one, but it wasn't good enough. I missed a lot of points. And going to pick up this is really important, especially if you take, say, a week off, a month off, a freaking year off like I did. I took 2 years off of writing. Almost 2 years off, and then I'm coming back to all these stories. So what do I have to do? I have to either read the last 10 chapters and hope that I remember everything else, or I go to my story Bible and check it out. So for my book like Epic of Bee, 500 Time Reborn, Monster Girl Ranching, I have massive story Bibles for them, and it's so easy to get back into them. I just quickly scan through and like, oh yeah, yep, I know exactly what I was doing, I know where I was going and everything. But that's why it's important. Then the last is professionalism. Working with an editor, co-author, or IP developers requires shared references. So when you go to talk, one of the things that is important is people will ask, well, what do you plan on doing with this book? Whatever else, like what is your idea? It's like, great, you want to read a book and everything, but I don't really have time to read your entire book to see if it's a good book or not. So you can be like, wow, here, check it out. Here's my story Bible. This is what my book's all about. And it doesn't mean that they're going to look at every character detail. It doesn't mean they're going to look at every plot point. But this does give them a very, very, very good idea of what your story is all about, where it's going, right? And that's why we have covered all these different points. Cost of no Bible. Contradictions, forgotten details, characters who change eye color, magic that works differently in chapter 20 than in chapter 3. Readers notice, trust erodes, and spell breaks. And there goes the immersion. So, and everything all boils down to continuity. Because if there's one thing that is important in every story, no matter what story you write, I don't care if it's only freaking 1,000 words long, is it needs to have continuity through it. If you say something at the beginning, or somebody acts like something, or something's gonna happen, you can't just go against that in the next friggin' line. You can't go against that in the next 20 chapters. You can't go against it at all without a reason. The silent continuity is a silent immersion killer. It breaks the spell. It brings people out and reminds them that they're still in this normal world and they're just reading a book, right? They're no longer inside that portal you just magicked up for them, right? When people, as an author, we get a special privilege. We have special powers as authors, right? We create portals that lead into our imaginations with these books. When somebody opens up a book, they're not just opening up a book, right? They're opening up a portal into your mind. This isn't just a book, it's a portal into your mind. And so while in here, you want them to be in this world, in this story you have created. We want to keep them there as much as humanly possible until they're done. And that's it. Then they step out and take a deep breath and like, oh, wow, what a ride. What a wow. When I read this book series, The Sword of Truth, which is 15 books long, by Terry Goodkind, oh my God, that thing took me for some rides. And when I got finished, I literally had to have a smoke. It was like that. I was like, wow, that, oh, wow, that was a story. Same with like Discardium. It's on its 16th book, and it's like literally just at the end of the thing. It's on its last book. I'm just waiting for the last song to come out, but it's been a ride the whole time. And in order to get that feeling, in order to deliver that feeling to the readers, we need to work. The most important thing is continuity. Readers trust. That's the whole point of continuity. Is the continuity. Readers came here to read your story, and that's awesome because they didn't have to. They didn't have to pick up their phone. They didn't have to pick up the book. They didn't have to do any of that. They did that because they want to find a good story, right? So they're trusting in us to give them that good story, to give them that good deliverance, to give them those tent poles, those expectations that the reader has by whatever means possible, right? But as long as we fulfill the expectations, we're usually going to write a good story, and people are usually going to stick around for it. So continuity errors are invisible until they're not. So continuity errors happen all the time. And I mean, sometimes even the reader misses them. Not just us as the writers, but even the readers sometimes miss them. But when they do catch them, then they look back, and then they catch the rest of them, and then they're like, what is going on here? Are you even paying attention? One moment of inconsistency can shatter the whole immersion spell, reminding the reader that they're consuming fiction and destroying the emotional investment you built. So you literally kick them by making continuity errors. You're freaking breaking the portal and kicking them out. So how continuity errors break trust? The jarring reminder. When a character's eyes color, readers are pulled out of the story and are reminded that they're just reading words on a page. They're no longer stepped into this alternate reality inside your mind. The logic collapse. If a character travels 100 miles in an hour on horseback, the world stopped making sense and readers stopped believing. So this is one of my favorite sayings about writing fiction. Is the best fiction is the most believable fiction, right? So if you're writing fantasy, say you're writing magic, right? Making some hocus pocus without reason magic system won't work. And the reason why it won't work is because there's nothing to relate to with it. The reason why magic systems can work is because we already have a basis where people already have a rough idea. Even though magic doesn't exist, even though elves don't exist, even though dwarves don't exist, we all have a rough idea of what an elf is, what magic is, and what a dwarf is, right? And so we try to build around those things. And so what we know, and while new ideas are good, we still have to build off a relative one, right? Like it still has to be relative to something. So if your magic system is, say, uses time or something like that, well, it still needs to be relevant to magic, meaning that there's some kind of cost involved in using it, right? And some kind of or irreversible problem. Um, the character betrayal, and then the final one's the character betrayal. When the character acts against her, that like this one gets me a lot. I've dropped so many stories, like not even kidding. I probably dropped at least 100 books or series. Well, probably books, yeah. Well, series, I guess. At least 100 series, and that's not even an understatement at all because I've read like over 500. um, it ruins the story when a character acts against the way that they have been built up as. When we have that character profile in our minds, the one that like as a reader when we're reading, we have a character profile that you, the author, have built and you've given to us by describing it rather than just putting a profile up. We get used to that, right? And we get used to the way that the character acts, and we get used to their their dumb little things where they like grab a shoulder or pinch the bridge of their nose or whatever, like the small things like that, or how they're just generally a nice person, or maybe how they're just a bit of a tool most of the time, but still like to help people. We get used to that, right? Those things become natural, and when a character breaks from that, again, it's an immersion breaker. But it's more than just an immersion breaker. This one is the most important out of all three. And I say this as for my own personal experience. If your character is betrayed from the way that they're supposed to act, you will, I guarantee you will lose readers. This is again why it's so important to keep the continuity in a character. We're almost done. Well, I was actually so funny you say that. Me and Steele actually know each other because I am. I own or like ran a couple D&D servers on Discord, and I ran my own custom games and did everything custom, and ran like 5 different games a week with it. So yeah, I was a D&D. I still am a D&D DM. Before I came here, I was writing stories long before I started writing stories. All right. So readers will forgive him. Like I said, readers will forgive impossible things. Readers will throw their brain out all the time. It's why anime logic exists, right? That whole stupid saying where I just oh what is that? Anime logic. Don't even try to process it. Throw your brain out and just watch. That's fine, right? We as readers we get that the anime logic, but inconsistencies are not logic, right? It's a mistake made by the author. It is a clear mistake, and it shows that you as an author don't care about your story enough to be consistent. And it might be an honest mistake, but it still doesn't matter, right? And that's one thing that's really important about doing your drafts and everything, and checking and making sure we have these story bibles, and making sure that we know all about our characters and everything that I've talked about in this. It all wraps back to the continuity and keeping our readers immersed in the story. The immersion paradox. The more immersive your world, the more dangling continuity errors, or the more damaging continuities errors become. If you read, the more you get somebody into your world and like using your logo, your lingos and your sayings and your curses and stuff like that, the harder, the more damaging it becomes for continuity to do. A perfectly good example is a book I was just reading called The Nightmare Realm Summoner by Atticus. It was the first book that I've ever pre-ordered. I pre-ordered the second novel. I've never pre-ordered a novel before because it's gonna come out and I'm gonna get it anyways. But I was so excited for it. I was so excited. The first book was so good. Then the second one came out and they introduced a new side character, and his character was so all over the place, so whiny, and just did not make any sense at all. Ruined the book for me. I still have yet to finish the book, and I've listened to it twice, and I can't get all the way through it because the character's just so bad. Brandon Sanderson did the same thing in Stormlight Chronicles with one of the characters, Shalon or whatever her name was, and her like whole mental break just drive me nuts. And like those are things that like they kill the immersion for readers. Like as soon as the character breaks, then they're like, oh, what? You're not telling me that I just put in all this effort to learn all this stuff about your book, and this is how you treat. This is from a reader's perspective. This is how you treat me, right? I am putting in the time. I'm putting in probably the money to sit down and read your creation, right? And like we expect readers to thank us and everything, and maybe they will after it's all done and stuff. But for the most part, they're just consuming. They're just consumers consuming, right? And the moment they find a hair in their food, a reader is no different than a foodie, right? The moment they find a hair in their food, all bets are off, belt comes off, and then they start hitting their hand. What is this? What is this? So the trust equation. Trust equals immersion times consistency. Breaking consistency, the immersion plummets. It takes chapters to build trust, but only one error to destroy it all. We build up our readers and we get them to the point where they're just like locked in and glued to this. Then the moment we make a mistake, they're like, it just breaks them out. And then the guy who was reading for 3 days straight is no longer reading now. Well, why did that happen? What happened here? Everything was going so fine, so good. But it was a mistake on your own part, right? So this is again why this whole continuity thing is so important. The reader's pact. When a reader enters your world, they make an unspoken agreement. They will suspend disbelief and accept your world's law or rules. They literally will toss their brains out and just take anime logic for the going thing. You maintain consistency within those rules. That's your job. The reader is there. Their job is to toss their brain out and just go along with it. Your job is to follow those rules and you to stay consistent. Break the pact, and the readers will give you a middle finger send off. So, common pitfalls for consistency problems. Inconsistent travel times and impossible geography are among the most common continuity errors. Getting from point A to point B, how long does it actually take? This is why we do research, people. This is why we actually have to do more than just put words on a paper. Writing a story is great, right? You have an awesome idea. But in order to make a great story, you need to understand the things inside your story. So if you're gonna use a mode of transportation, you need to understand how fast that mode of transportation is, right? And don't give me that, oh, well, it's a magical vehicle. Well, we have freaking flying vehicles. We have normal vehicles that run on non-magical means. You can get an estimation on what the average is. Like our kilometers and miles are still measured. So you have that for that. So they break believability silently until the reader does the math and does the mental math in their head, and then they're like, oh no, what is going on here? Does this guy even know what he's talking about? Are we gonna get? Is this gonna? The biggest problem with something like this is when a person sees this and they do the mental math, they say, oh no, That's wrong. Is this going to be a continuous problem? Are they going to continually mix things like this and maybe even more other stuff because they're uninformed because they didn't do proper research? It makes you look like an idiot. So, the speed demon. Characters travel between the cities in hours. It should take days. Horses never tire. Ships stall or sail against the wind at full speed. Right? That doesn't happen ever. Teleporting characters. The characters in City A in Chapter 10 and City B by Chapter 11 with no explanation of how they got there and so fast. Shrinking world. Distance is changed. Now this is another problem too. It from getting to point A to point B takes this long. And all of a sudden they need to get back from point B to point A, and all of a sudden they do it in 1/3 of the time with no explanation. Because if geography doesn't matter to you, it's not going to matter to the readers. They're not going to care about the effort you're putting in to like describe your world, right? And that means like all the time you put in to like make a really cool or put in all this world building or like effort, readers will dismiss it because they won't believe it. They'll think that you don't know what you're talking about. So this is just a made up mumbo jumbo. It's probably not going to make any sense anyways because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about here. The solution: map and measure. Figure it out. Research. We're gonna create a map. There's lots of different things to do it. You can use Anvil. You can just ask the AI to draw you out a map. There's so many different ways you can do it. You're not doing this for anybody else. You're doing this for yourself, right? You need to have a visual map. Even if you just grab a piece of paper, draw the things out. Make sure you can kind of point. Well, if this is right here and that is right here, then we'll say this 1 inch on the map is 100 miles. Or is it 10 miles, right? Like that there's a big difference right there. But knowing that little bit of information makes it so you can make everything believable, even if you don't know a damn thing about planes, trains, or automobiles. You can still look up the information. There's no reason for anybody to say I don't know that, right? Or to say I can't figure it out. There's literally Google. There's AIs that you can ask any question. We're in the wrong era to be stupid. Establishing travel speeds, again, just looking up your information about the types of transports you're using and how fast they can actually go. And if they can go faster, why? If they're going slower, why? Right? You need to know this stuff. Track timelines and locations. Like I said, if it takes 5 hours to get from city A to city B, and it only takes an hour and 10 minutes the next time to get back, well, we need to know why. Or the reader is going to be like, what is this? Did they forget how long it took before? The reader or the author? Again, whenever you make mistakes like this, it makes the reader question your ability to be a writer, to be giving out this type of information, right? Because if you can't do a simple fact check and figure out how fast a horse walks, or how fast a donkey can move, or how fast a plane can move just by typing in how fast can a plane move into Google, you probably shouldn't be writing a book. But, some people do anyways. And that's why we talk about these things, to make sure that everybody understands the importance of them. The other one is accounting for obstacles. There's very rarely a straight line to a destination. It just doesn't happen. There's mountains, there's rivers, there's weather, there's war. It all affects travel. Using these you can use this stuff for drama, but be consistent about their impact. If you have a hailstorm and it has fist-size hail, and then the next time you have a hailstorm, it has, pea-size hail. Well, why did that happen? And then you're just gonna leave the reader with like a questioning look on their face, like, what did I just read? Does he even know what's going on here? So here's a simple formula for just your basic travel plus speed, or distance plus speed equals travel time. So, or just distance divided by speed equals travel time. So if you're traveling 300 miles and you're traveling at 30 miles per day, it's going to take you roughly about 10 days. The character makes it in 3 days, you're going to need a very good reason why it happened that way. Another common pitfall, the power creep. Oh boy. I am criminally I am bad for this. Hey, what resources do you recommend for making organic complex characters? From structure as a person to dialogue. What resources? Your brain. That's a good one. You should really. So, I mean, you should be like for your main characters. I always suggest picking them yourself. At least picking like your basis for them and everything, and then like figuring out like getting a character cheat sheet for character types is, especially if you're first writing out, is probably pretty important. And I highly suggest this to almost anybody. Is finding online or even getting an AI to write you out a character trait cheat sheet. So basically, it'll be a sheet filled with all different types of character traits, right? Things, and then you can go through those and look at them and be like, what do I want? Right? What do I want in my character? Right? How a character looks, how they act, is is will kind of base it off of what you want from the character, right? What their emotions are, what their drive is, and but like what their traits really, the way that some say, if somebody has a tendency to like do the glasses bump and turn their nose up at people, well then you're gonna usually want one of those guys with a nice clean cut, somebody who's seems like they have it all together, but they're just a pompous jerk, right? And like, but knowing that now, that helps us kind of give them the nice clean cut glasses, button up shirt with the ties, blue slacks, kind of pointed black shoes. It's like we now we already know that, right? That so that that helps us build our character ideals. um, and like to be able to build each one of your characters. And like from there, then you just make the choices by yourself, or you can just use a random generator. I don't know how many random characters I've randomly generated just because in some of my stories, there's just a ton of them. And after you've written about like 16 different series, I have one book that is just filled, like an actual physical book, just filled with names. And it's about this big, and it has over 3,000 different names in it from my stories from Harem Reborn, Hyde World Walker Reborn, Kaiser Reborn, Epic of B, and a couple other books. But that's not even all my books. Like there's probably almost as many names for people in my books as I have total chapters written. But yeah, almost done. We're almost there. Good lord, my 1 hour thing turned into a 2 hour. Sorry for it taking so long, guys. But I really, I didn't want to skimp out on anything, and I wanted to give you guys everything from my point of view and my experience as a writer. Okay. No problem. Absolutely no problem at all. So back to the common pitfall here, power creep. So power creep is the gradual forgetting or ignoring of a character's established limitations. You know, that whole plot armor thing where we just push through the limits with the power of friendship. You know, unless you're writing frickin' My Hero Academia or Power Rangers, no. No. Over time, characters become overpowered, eliminating tensions, and because stakes require vulnerability, you need to have some sort of like catch to things, right? Great, somebody is overpowered, but there's got to be some way to interact with them, or the story's gonna fall flat because it's just gonna be somebody walking around fucking dummying everybody they meet or anybody that tries to interact with them, and there's no challenge, there's no reason for the reader to stick around because it's just a boring generic person about a person walking around whacking people in the head. The deuce. So to talk about how the power creeps destroy stories is first, like I was just talking about, the elimination of stakes. If your protagonist can solve any problem, well, what is the story even about? There is no tension. The readers need to believe failure is possible. There's gotta be an edge, right? Even in an overpowered story, there's gotta be an edge. The Deus Ex Machina trap. Writers paint themselves into a corner. They sometimes unlock, and then they sometimes unlock new powers. This is the stupid power of friendship. And like I said, if it's not like something that's built around the power of BS, not friendship, because that's what it is. It's the power of BS. I'm not gonna swear, but that's what it is. It just really takes away. You really need to. That story really needs to have it, like My Hero Academia or Power Rangers, right? Like you need to have like every kind of dark of the night is just built or is just jumped out of by like a power of friendship moment or a power of me internalizing my past traumas kind of thing, and then just using whatever to like get out of the situation, any like random freaking thing or just something made up. But that's what a Deus Ex Machina is. That's like just using anything to get out of a situation that you put yourself into, and not following like the consistency of your story, right? You can't just have them use the power of friendship when they've been using the power of mana the entire time to solve every situation. You can't have them use the power of friendship if they've been using their freaking head every time to solve the situation. The character flatline. Overpowered characters don't need to grow. They don't need to adapt, and they don't need to struggle. They become boring. There's just nothing to it. It's like no matter how hard they get knocked down, I don't know how many times they get blown up, there's nothing that can stop them. They just get up. They basically Homelander it. And the character can do everything is a character readers care nothing about. We need some struggle. When we read about somebody, our lives, most readers don't read because they are overly fulfilled and their life's absolutely perfect. Because there's a small little niche little spot that's missing and they need to fill it in. So, that's what we're here for. That's the writers. So, common power creep examples. Magic without cost. There's gotta be a cost. It's cool. It's awesome. So it's gotta have a cost, right? Or else it's just, again, it'll fall flat. In Chapter 1, magic exhausts the user, but in Chapter 20, they're casting spells all day without breaking a sweat. I mean, maybe if Chapter 20 is like 30 years later, sure. Then, yeah, I can see that. But if we're following basic progression and everything, that's pretty early to be at the top of your game. And if that's the case, if you're going to have them do that early, well, then they shouldn't be getting quite as exhausted. Maybe they feel a little tired, a little breathing a little heavier, a little drained. They're surely not exhausted if they can cast nonstop all day in 20 chapters. Forgotten weaknesses. Oh, this guy's allergic to water, but in Chapter 20, he's taking a bath. Interesting. That's what'll happen. Characters' fear of fire centered around is central to the arc until they walk through a burning building without mention, right? They're not scared of this at all. They're just like, eh, it's just another day. I'm a fucking hero, bruh. Sorry for my swearing. Pardon. Skill inflation. A normal swordsman becomes a master in a week. Well, sure, if it's a young master and this is some cultivation Wuxia novel. But, you know, as I said before, the best kind of fiction is the most believable fiction. The closer you can get to reality with fiction, the more a reader can relate to it, and they can relate it to reality. It's like, sure, this is a book about spaceships flying through space and aliens and galactic battles. So tell me, Magic, how can I make this relatable to everybody else? Well, it's the way that they do things. It's the things that they do, and it's how they're done that make things relatable to everything. So if you are, say, training to be a a laser, or somebody's going to learn how to shoot laser beam rifles, well, there's quite an extensive knowledge base about how to shoot a rifle. So you can get a lot of information from that and understand that if you pick up a rifle and try to shoot it, you're not, I don't care how great you think you are, you're not going to shoot straight the first time. It took me a long time to be able to shoot straight. And I mean, even if a person's good at something, well, we need to be able to explain why they're so good at it, that they have past experience in it. Because you don't just pick something up and are great at it unless you're great at everything, right? And that's not just that usually means that you have an overall good skill, and you're overall, say, dexterous. If you're overall dexterous, you're going to be really good at things. They're good with your hands, and you're going to be able to do cool little tricks and stuff with your hands. So whether it's poi or spitting things or maybe juggling or drawing, they're all dexterous qualities. So usually if you're good at one, you'll be good at the other. But in most cases, people have to take a while to learn things, and your story needs to reflect that. Oh, look! Look, it's my favorite one to yell at people about. The power of friendship. God damn it. I swear. Oh, this is my least favorite thing. Like, one of my biggest hates in power creeps is using the power of friendship as a deus ex machina. Ugh. No. God, I hated it in Power Rangers. I loved it in My Hero Academia. But it belongs in stories where it belongs. You cannot deus ex machina yourself out of a situation with power of friendship in a dark kiss or in a dark freaking dark fantasy story. It just doesn't work like that. People they won't just close your book, they'll throw it at the wall or hit somebody with it. You will have caused somebody else bodily harm by your mistake. but seriously. Emotional peaks suddenly unblock abilities never mentioned before, solving impossible problems. That is what the power of friendship is. It doesn't always have to be the power of friendship. It's emotional, like exactly what I just said. The solution. Documented limitations, you know? The story Bible can say a lot about your limitations, you know? You say somebody can only do this much, or they're scared of this, or whatever. Well, we put that down in the story Bible, so we don't make mistakes about it later. So in your story Bible, you create limitation section for every powered character. Anybody who's got a big level of power, and they could be problematic, or you plan on going further with their power. And even if you don't plan on going further with their power, if they're going to be in a story more than once, they need to be able to have limitations. So you, as a writer, know that. So you're not trying to push past them to make the story sound cool, because that's what happens, right? This sounded really cool, but we don't really think about how this just kind of pushes past what the character's limitations are, and we don't have an excuse for this. We don't have a reason for this. So the reader is going to be like, oh, why did this happen? And this is one of the ones that aren't as bad, right? But it's still a problem, right? You know, if we get rid of Murphy's Law, anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. You get enough of these and it will stack up. Poop rolls downhill. It only gets bigger as it goes. So the section should have what can they do, what can't they do, what is the cost, or what does it cost, and how do they grow. So, and then for my last one, we're going to do the last and final pitfall, the ghost character. The ghost character is an embarrassing character where a character who is clearly present in a scene simply vanishes during the dialogue or action, only to reappear later with no explanation of where they went. This happens all the time. You add somebody to a conversation in your writing, and then you forget that they're there, and then 2 paragraphs later, or a chapter later, you're like, oh, wait. Yeah, he's just been standing there the entire time, hasn't he? Just standing there looking stupid. So, ghost character problem. The disappearing acts. 5 characters enter the room, 2 have a conversation. The 2 are just standing there watching it all happen. Never mentioned again in the scene. Where did they go? What are they doing? Are they all picking their nose? Are they picking each other's nose? Are they like standing behind each other, picking out lice at each other's hairs? What are they doing? You leave this up to interpretation, and it's never good, especially if it's somebody like me. It's one of my favorite games is going to a restaurant and like interpreting what people are talking about at their tables. So the silent witness, like I just said, characters discuss secrets, make plans, or reveal vulnerabilities while others are present. But those characters never act or never react or are mentioned. So it's like you have people in the room that you forget about that know all this important information. But that's bad. That's really bad because there's 2 reasons why this is bad. One, it's lazy and you're just not paying attention to what you're doing. And 2, it's a missed chance, right? You can use that spot for later problems, right? Maybe you forgot, but you can make that as your character forgetting too. And then you can have it come up later as that person, like, being a mole, or maybe revealing this to somebody just in a random passing conversation, and then it getting out, and this affecting the story later on. There's just so many different ways you can use that ghost character, even if you do forget them. But you still have to remember them. Even if you do forget them, you have to remember at some point, and hopefully before you're done the completed version. The repeating extra. The character vanishes for a chapter, then suddenly reappears as if they've been there the whole time. No explanation. They're just chilling out. They're like a lackey following behind. They don't have any personal opinion, and they don't interact with anything in the surrounding. Every character in the scene is a promise. If you have somebody in your scene, they have to do something. You have to have some sort of thing that gives them a reason to be in the scene. Sure, I know you're going to say that, oh, well, you have groups of people all the time and not everybody has a part and stuff, right? But everybody has a place in the scene. They may not have an acting part in the scene, but everybody has a place. And if everybody has a place, they have a reason, right? So their reason is, A, they came with the group, B, they were already there, or C, nefarious reasons. So why ghost characters happen? Writer focus tunnel. I mean, it happens with us all. You get focused, dialed into something, completely forget that there's another person in the group. Revision oversight. So a character gets cut or you cut a character's line, but then you don't realize that was the only thing you have that mentions that character in the scene at all. So you have to kind of watch out for that kind of thing. And that means that one thing that's important is if you're editing a part or taking anything out of a chapter, it's very important to go and read the entire chapter so you can see what that taking. Because sure, heat of the moment, you can see up and down paragraph or two above, two below paragraphs and be like, oh, well, it doesn't seem to affect this, but maybe it was brought up earlier or later on in the chapter, right? So again, that's why you need to really check your work and everything. And then poor scene planning. This is why why I say the two-liner, the what and so what, right? For chapter summaries. The solution: scene presence tracking. Before writing, list present. If you have trouble with this, or if you know you're gonna have a bunch of people in the scene, just quickly write down the people in the scene. I do this a lot, especially because I write harem, and there's always lots of people in the scene, right? And to remember what everybody does and the way that everybody acts and stuff, that's why it's really important for me to have all these different things like character bibles, whatever else. But it's just as important for anybody else. So, for like writing the list of characters, during the writing, acknowledging everybody, making sure that if you're having people there, whether your character acknowledges them or the narrator acknowledges them, depending on the point of view, right? So if the character acknowledges them, maybe they just mentally acknowledge them that they're there. It's just a mental thought. Or if it's a narrator, they can narrate the character's presence. But we need to have some sort of reason or some sort of place for that character. The characters always need a place in a scene, because giving them a place gives them, like I said, I'm repeating this over and over again, but it gives them a reason to be there. And then finally, during the revision, the roll call, check who entered, who spoke, and when the scene, or where is everyone at the end of the scene. Now, these aren't things that you're actually writing down in the chapter. These are just things when you're editing, right? You check at the beginning of the chapter, seeing who's all in the scenes, and then just make sure that they each have some sort of place. Whether they have a part or a place, it's up to you and up to the scene. So, that, my friends, is the end of this long-winded explanation lecture on the writing. I hope you guys all got a good chance to got something from this and learned some things, and this helps you build your stories going forward. This will be posted up here, so if you guys have questions. I'm also part of the server. My name is Magic on the server, the Demon's Pen. You guys can look at my novels online, but if you guys have any questions or you want to talk shop or whatever else, I'm free. Most of the time, I'm a writer. I also work full-time in construction, so I'm doing quite a bit of things. But I'm more than willing to help answer your questions, whatever else. Just remember, plan with a purpose. Document everything. Protect your continuity to keep your writers immersed. Every story or every great story was built, not just written. J.R.R. Tolkien, all these, like Brandon Sanderson, Robert Jordan, Anne Hathaway, you name it. Or not Anne Hathaway, Anne McCaffrey. Oh, I'm naming all my favorite authors. But, I mean, the blueprint is in your hands now. You can go construct something extraordinary. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you will. Who knows? But I'm giving you the tools and everything you need to know. This might not help you with better grammar. This might not help you with better sentence structure. But at least now you got a better idea of how the story goes. And yes, thank you very much, Victor, for answering everybody's messages and stuff when I couldn't. If there's any questions while I'm still here now, feel free to ask away. Glad that this is finally good to go. Like I said, it took way longer than I thought, but let's see if you guys have any. Supervise power system, tier power. So here I'll actually answer. Oh yeah, 100%. I have the doc. I'll upload the slide to, or like my slide document to the, or my slide presentation to the server. So where is GIANY? You were asking about power systems. So here's the thing with power systems and their whole creep and the whole thing behind them. Small book, small power system. Long book, big power system. It's really the formula for it, right? In a cultivation novel, if you want a like, if you're going to have a short story, you are not going to have 15 levels of cultivation with 10 steps in each level, right? You're going to have 10 levels of cultivation, and you're going to get through each one of the, you're going to break through each level. You're not going to have to break through each step of the level, right? So your power system should be indicative of the length of your story. Thanks, Victor. I really appreciate that. So yeah, if you want to make a really big and crazy power system, then you really need to have a really big and crazy epic tale. If you want a short power, if you want a small power system, if you have a short tail, you're not going to want to put it into a ton of effort into this power system. You're going to want to make sure that it's direct, easy to understand, and something that's really palatable for the reader, but not too many different levels, because you only have from say this point to this point to fit all those levels and the information about those levels in. And if you add too much stuff, it's all going to be forgotten by the reader, and it will have absolutely no impact. That's why with bigger, longer novels, it's fine to have a big, complicated power system, because if there is almost 3,000 chapters like there is in Shadow Slaves and their whole nightmare system, which I'm absolutely in love with. I'm in the middle of reading Shadow Slave. I can't tell you how much I'm like on chapter 900 or something. 950, I think I'm on. Anyways, it has a great system, and it has a lot of complicated parts, but hokey Dinah, I know them all. I know every part of them because it gives me enough time to there's 2,800 chapters. I've had enough time to get used to every part and have it be ingrained in my mind. So yeah, it's complicated, but I love it. So it's awesome. I have lots of time to really get used to it and really get involved. I don't read short stories. I don't write short stories. I don't read them because I get invested in the stories. So that's why I look at power systems in the sense of your power system is indicative to the length of your novel. If you want a big power system, you have to have a long or epic tale. If you don't want, or if you want to write a short book, well then you can't put an extreme, or you can't put a complicated power system in it. I'm glad that all your questions were answered, Reader Wheel. Does anybody else have anything? Yeah, if you plan on doing multiple one shots about the same power system, you definitely do not want an over complicated power system. In fact, the less complicated it is, the more beneficial it will be to your story. Because if you're doing a bunch of one shots, you want them to specifically focus on the moments in the story, right? You do not want them to have to remember a long-winded system every story, right? You want them to remember something that's easy, straight to the point, so you can focus on the plot of your story. Because if you're writing one shots, that means you're not adding any filler. You're just going right into the story. You're telling the story. You're not deviating from the course. You're just dealing with that situation. And if it's a one shot, it's usually just a scene or an event that you're dealing with. Yeah, of course. Reader, we will. One last question. How would you build a power system, like making your own? Well, I mean, so whenever you deal with a power system, your first question is, where is this power system taking place? Is it here on Earth? Is it in a isekai fantasy world? Or is it in space? Right? That's a very important part. Your next question is, what outside factors are there? Does this world have magic already? Does it not have magic? Is technology sufficiently advanced to what we have right now? Or is everybody still in the Victorian age and running around in buggies and carts? Or do they even just, or does everybody have bows and arrows? and stuff. You don't want an extremely overpowered system in an era of bows and arrows, right? And it would be kind of just, it's how do you make it interesting and fun if there's nothing really good to interact with other than having everybody ask a or ask a question on everything you do. And then then once you figure out that kind of stuff, once you figure out your landscape, then you move on to what do you want out of this system? What do you want? What do you why are you writing this book, right? If you're adding a system, it's usually a central focus of a book. For lit RPGs, your system is usually, well, my book, Monster Go Ranching in Another World. The system they use is the ranching system. It is integral. It's like it has a bunch of different parts and everything, but I made sure that I figured out how it was gonna work. I wanted something that would kind of work with the smut value, but also kind of get or work with the idea that the main character didn't want the easy way. He wanted to get power on his own and stuff. But this takes it a step further by forcing him to help other people to get power from, or to forcing him to help other people get stronger, which will in turn make himself stronger. But he also still has to train as a shaman as well. So that's why it's important to understand those little parts before you even decide what your system should be. Because if you don't understand that, then you kind of have to work around whatever idea you pick, right? And now all of a sudden your entire story is built around your system rather than your story being about a story with a system in it. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else have any more questions? Because I think we're almost at the 2.5 hour mark. And I have another meeting after this. Yeah, you really want to. Awesome, man. Again, like I said, my name is Magic. You guys probably see me in the server in the no the Novelpedia server where everybody is, not the author version. You'll see me on there as Magic the Demon Pen. I'm like the immortal ink reader or whatever. But yeah, you can get a hold of me on there. Feel free. I don't really take DMs, but if you do want to talk to me privately, and you are a writer and you're over on the writing server, you can just ping me in writing help or whatever else, and I'll come over and answer your questions either at the time or as soon as I can get to them. So thank you guys very very much for listening to listening to my little talk, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and I hope you guys got a lot out of it.